is where I really let go of like the 2,000-pound backpack of emotional baggage. It was the moment I looked back and realized that no one loves me. Not my mother, not my stepdad. And even though my biological dad tried to claim that he loved me, he still didn't. It was at that moment where I let out the deepest cry of my life. So much so that I got almost severe tremors. I went numb in my body. It was literally the most earth-shattering emotional experience I ever had. To finally come to that conclusion after 2 decades.
So why did you choose this world?
Well, for starters, it has this nice blue tint, so it definitely helps with my eyes, because I've been getting vision therapy. I have 3 eye diagnoses, which is convergence insufficiency, spasm of accommodation, and hypermetropia, if I'm pronouncing that right. So like even just having this filter alone, it's really nice to be in. And then, you know, it's very soft, calming, soothing. Obviously it's like very pretty. You got all of the, I mean, you could kind of think of them as like fireflies or just lights or petals like floating up into the sky, and then you get the aurora borealis. But there's a lot of sentimental pieces in this world that like I didn't realize for a while until of kind of thinking about it. Like, it's kind of like a portrayal of my life in a way, because for a while I used to live down there in that city below the water, you know, and like when you're underwater, things feel and sound different. And I sort of think of this as the numb days, the days of suppression. And I'll get to what the whale symbolizes, but it's definitely the biggest thing that was literally floating around in my life for the longest time, but I had no idea it was there, because, you know, all the buildings are in the way. I was too deep in my own issues. I couldn't hear anything because, you know, everything was underwater. And at this point in my life now, I'm above everything and I can breathe. And, you know, you can see the different towers. Let that represent my interests, my ambitions, my dreams, things to go after, acting as beacons, and just trying to find a path, find my way over there.
Well, it certainly is a pretty world, and it seems like you put a lot of good thought into it. So, what should I call you, or what is your name?
Well, let's turn on the mirror so everybody can finally see what avatar I've been using. So, Bigby Wolf, definitely very close to, you know, my character, and even to this day, with just kind of a lot of anger management. So like on the surface, in his human form, you know, he's relatively calm and collected, and, you know, he, depending on like where he's portrayed, like say in The Wolf Among Us, he's like a detective, and like I could see myself in that as well, because like when I talk with people about their issues, I'm also like a detective, so I'm trying to get to the bottom of things and solve problems, and kind of, you know, we may take an adventure together, and at the same time, the darker parts of myself, you know, would be when he turns into a wolf and massacres people, because like I definitely have that capability within myself that I, you know, have to manage. There's been a lot of anger management in my life. And like even in The Wolf Among Us, it's like every time you choose to go beast mode, it's kind of like a very extreme situation, and things don't always, you know, go as intended, or it might just be a very poor outcome. So I, you know, always put a lot of effort in managing that.
Why don't you tell everybody how old you are?
Well, I mean, like, I don't even have to like hide the range. Like, I'll just tell people that, you know, right now I am 28 years old. But most people who see me in person say that I look younger, sound older, based on the way I carry myself.
I know from personal experience you definitely do. Um, so where were you born and where did you grow up?
Born in, well, Illinois. But yeah, you could just say I was born, you know, in Chicago, Illinois, moved around a lot, transitioned over to Arizona, so like 9 years Illinois, 9 years Arizona, and then joined the military, which I'll get into later, and then hopped around from there, did a bit of traveling. After military, moved around for trying out a different job, and then life happens, kicks your shit in, and you're going to Ohio, and then they're all Illinois, Texas, Arizona, Missouri, Ohio, Arizona, Las Vegas, Colorado. It's a whole fucking thing. But you know, I was born in Illinois, and right now I am finally in Colorado.
So you're in Colorado now then?
Yeah, Denver, Colorado.
And do you like where you are currently?
Yeah, I mean, I did research, you know, on all 50 states, and it came down to Texas and Colorado. And really my biggest hesitation to going directly to Colorado was that, you know, it would be super expensive, and like, would I be able to afford it? And it'd be a rough transition, and it'd be super risky. But because licensure as a counselor, as a therapist, you know, it's bound to one state right now, I would have to wait, you know, however many years before I have my hours, and then I would have to transfer, and then I'd have to get the supervision hours all over again. So I was like, fuck it, let's just take the risk and go. And, you know, found a job, didn't work out, found another job, did work out. But yeah, I mean, like, I like Colorado. It has like, you know, all 6.5 seasons that happen, you know, at any random time. It's got a lot of pretty scenery. I'd say the collective people are more progressive and just kinder as a whole. Like, just kind of every area that I've been in, whether like rundown or more upscale, like typically the people are just a higher quality of like kindness, whereas, you know, in other places not so much. So like the collective is definitely better. And yeah, I mean, the weather is still something that I'm kind of learning fully about, but I like that, you know, it can definitely it can definitely be like pretty warm. And then I'm also getting used to how to navigate with all the snowstorms that happened in March, and like it was super dangerous to like drive on that, and like you know, like just all the things that kind of come with living in a state that has snow to begin with. But overall, like, especially I've had a conversations with a couple people about it who kind of been a bit of travelers or who have lived in Texas and Colorado, and like they describe Texas as being like super insular. So like, you know, people will make you understand that you are in Texas and kind of be super close-minded and rigid about things, and just not as open and free and kind of willing to accept, you know, people and things of, you know, different levels of diversity. Someone had described it as like you kind of have to do things in a particular way there, otherwise you're an outcast. Whereas they said when I'm in Colorado, it just feels like I'm in a state. You know, there's no pressure, there's no force, there's a lot more acceptance. So in terms of like weather, scenery, people, activities, it all seems like it's kind of one of the better states to live in. Especially that matches up with what I wanted.
Well, that's great. So you've lived in the U.S. your whole life then?
I mean, yeah. The only time I went outside the U.S. was, I believe, one trip to Mexico. One trip to Mexico, a deployment to Cuba. Yeah. I plan to travel, you know, in the future once, you know, my career as a licensed professional counselor, LPC, is more established. But yeah, I've been in the US for most of my life.
Alright then, so here is the most important question of the whole day. What is your favorite color?
There's definitely a fucking right answer to this. It's definitely gonna be the blue gang.
Oh yeah? I knew it.
So
what would clue you in?
I mean, I have like a high affinity for both fire and water, but definitely I feel as though water more often. It's just very calming and soothing, and you know, I love the rain and the serenity in that, and just being in places that have water. So like that also plays a big factor into this world and my affinity for it as well.
Awesome. So, a little bit getting into the heavier stuff then. What brings you to your best self?
Yeah, when I've asked a lot of people this question, I've never really hear anyone say something particularly sentimental or innate. I mean, like, sure, people might say their kids or sleep or, you know, a combination of things, but like, yeah, all those things definitely do play a part for me, but mine tends to be a little bit more cognitive, emotional in combination. Like, I remember when I was younger, and I heard the song "Changes" by Tupac. I was like, I felt a sense of a duty to the world that I didn't quite understand yet. He was following his vision and his passion to, you know, fight for the cause that he believed in, and kind of speaking out about a lot of the injustices that were going on. The black
Alright.
community, people who were, you know, doing drugs, just a lot of racism, and just a lot of disparities. And like when I hear that song, you know, I would think about, and at such a young age too. Like I definitely coined it as I think about 11, of like what can I do? And when I think about like what brings me to my best self, I kind of reflect on, you know, my values, my vision, what, you know, like the inner child in me wants with wanting to save the world, you know, however I would make that happen. And then I sort of like think back to like holding myself to, you know, like a better standard and striving to grow and be better. So like music, sleep, eating well, exercise, remembering what I stand for and what I'm fighting for, and remembering that there's a lot of people out there going through unnecessary suffering. There's a lot of people who are suffering so greatly that, you know, they're very close or have committed suicide, and kind of doing what I can to, you know, answer the call, the mental health crisis that's going on globally right now, and looking to take to help lead humanity out of the emotional dark ages. When I think about what brings me to my best self, I think about how far I've come from how angry I used to be, and how unhealthy I was, and just broken and torn apart. I try to think of what I could do to be better, or like how the situation could be better. Like, was there a better path, a better option? Is there's something that, you know, it could improve on? Just kind of reminding myself of a lot of those things, and then also listening to music to kind of harmonize with it.
I think that's really beautiful. Honestly, I also believe that, you know, your best self comes along when you're able to make that effort to bring it out of you, and it seems like you've come a long way from that. Would you like to transition a little bit into talking about where exactly you did come from?
You said where I did come from? What do you mean?
Just, you talked about being angry and just sort of, it sounds like somewhat, maybe in your opinion, a worse place than you are now. Would you like to sort of talk about that?
Yeah.
On a scale of 1 to 10, how truthful are you with yourself?
You know, when I've thought about that question in relation to myself, I wanted to think about like what would my answer have been like in my early 20s or teens. And the funny thing about that is, like, to me, in what I was feeling, because I didn't know anything else, I didn't know the difference, I still would have rated pretty high. But I wonder if my younger self had heard that question, that I might have started to explore a little bit and been like, what would I have to lie about? What would I have to push down? Because I had been suppressing for so long, I literally forgot. And it wasn't until my mother, my covert narcissistic mother, sent a text one day saying I'm a bad mother, that, you know, I started to question things very heavily. So I was like, where did that come from? But in more present times, I would definitely solidly put myself at a 9, because I confront everything that I can, but sometimes what I like to describe as my cognitive inventory, sometimes it gets so full that I just neglect to give things attention in the time of day. So naturally they sort of just get forced out, and maybe I don't, you know, address those things as much as I should have. So that would be the one point that's missing. And like, I could do a better job with that. At this point, I have addressed so much in my mental health wounds that really there's not too much left. So it's not as much of a priority. Like, I still want to go see a therapist to double check once I have, you know, the time and you know, disposable income to sort of throw at that. But like, for now, I'm very healthy, very honest with myself, and like, I process things at minimum, like on a every day to other day, you know, see if I can have a crying session weekly. And it's, yeah, made an insane amount of progress for not having, you know, sought help.
What kind of progress have you made more specifically? Is there anywhere you'd like to go from there?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind is like, let's talk about what it looked like when I was super unhealthy. So like, right now, I'll outline the 3 things that I definitely want to talk about and try to squeeze into like a 2 to 3 hour time limit. And that would be what it was like to grow up alone. You know, what it was like feeling just unloved, unlovable, and how that manifested in my life and kind of sent me on a very destructive path. What it was like to, you know, grow up and still live with ADHD and kind of being gifted in a variety of ways. But progress I made specifically. So, trying to think, like, thinking back as early as I could remember, as young as I was, the first thing that I remember that I felt that was wrong with me was like, I remember, what grade was it? This was in Plainfield, Illinois. I think it might have been 1st or 2nd grade, something like that. You're in the cafeteria, and I remember it was such a fucking small thing. We were sitting at the table, and I think I like wanted to sit somewhere specifically, and then like the kid said no, and like normally like something like that wouldn't bother me, but like I just started crying and I couldn't control it. Like, I just couldn't, and like they got freaked out, and then they immediately like moved and said, okay, you can sit here. And I was like, no, like, I'm like, I don't know why I'm crying. It's not like a big deal. And then, like, you know, that was that, and they didn't, you know, they didn't pay too much mind to it after that. Things went back to normal. But I remember there being different parts of my life, you know, before 10 years old, I'd say, that I felt the same thing. You know, kind of like my feelings didn't matter, and I would just suppress them because they didn't matter. Like, what's the point of feeling these emotions if they're not validated, or if no one cares? And that would sort of lead into the unlovable thing, because one of the earlier memories that I know contributed to this Because I remember I vaguely remember the earliest time of going to my mother and kind of, you know, crying or being upset about something and then it being dismissed. But I definitely remember in detail, I think I might have been 7 or 8 years old. This is also, I think, still in plain field. Yeah, I remember the house. I remember going into her room. I was super upset about something. I was crying, a tear. Like I had my head on her chest. Tear went down her chest. And just nothing. No comforting words. No consoling touch. No, it's gonna be okay. No signs of any love or of compassion. Nothing. And I remember just maybe briefly looking up or just kind of getting up and then walking away in silence. There's just nothing. That would be a very strong foundation for a lot of the other unhealthy and dysfunctional things that I started to do in my life. For one thing, video games were absolutely, and I didn't even realize it at the time, but just my absolute savior for growing up alone. You know, the more I reflect back on my childhood, the more it was just like I was this kid that had a stepdad and a mom and a sister, and you know, for the most part they were just never around or very minimally around, just kind of doing their own thing. And as long as I was breathing, you know, that would be just the checkbox, the only checkbox, basically. And I would be playing games like all the time, even to a very exhausting point of where I'd be absolutely bored and disgusted with the game because I had, you know, played it so much and in so many different ways, and it just completely sucked it dry. But like, what else did I have to do? I didn't have anybody else, and that kind of led to me being like an somewhat introverted social butterfly, or an ambivert, or selectively extrovert almost through desperation of wanting to feel loved subconsciously without even really knowing it. You know, as a kid at the time, you know, thought it was just me following what I wanted to do, but it was definitely more than that. I would hop around, and this carried with me for a while. I would hop around from friend to friend, circle to circle, almost, no, definitely to an unhealthy point of like where I, you know, all the time, I never really wanted to be at home, because there is that just like the whale, I had no idea what it was, but I did not want to be down there. I never wanted to be at home because I wasn't home. There's just this giant threatening or ominous thing that I couldn't quite describe or understand, but just for some reason I just never wanted to be there. So, you know, both in gaming and just my athleticism, I made friends pretty easy for the most part.
So you said, yes? Go on.
Just say I remember there was a defining point of when we had moved to Arizona, Gilbert, Arizona. There was a kid I had met who, you know, I thought we were, you know, fairly good friends, but, you know, it just kind of turned out he just, like, you know, hanging out occasionally, and we weren't, you know, super close. I was honestly never super close with any of my friends, but I remember I came over and he gave such a exhausted look and response of like I just don't want to hang out. Like I'm sick of it. Cuz like he was the only friend I had when I was there. And you know, I was still suppressing the shit out of my feelings, so like to me, I was just like okay, gotta go find someone else or gotta go do something else. He's like got something going on. So it didn't really hurt my feelings. But I just remember like that was like a defining moment of like kind of hopping around a lot. What were you gonna say?
I just wanted to ask you about how your home life sort of had led you to get into, you said, gaming and athletics as well, right?
Well, the athleticism. I mean, like I was always like just a super active kid, you know, skipping motor development milestones, running like as the second I could even stand. Um, you know, I like being super active and because you know it was stimulating, it felt good. I was very curious. I like to explore. I would climb trees. I would run everywhere. I was very, you know, immersed in just being active and kind of, you know, exercising and moving. So I mean, like that's like a honestly, it's like a core part of who I am. I often just don't feed it as much as I probably should, just because you know, I guess gaming kind of had more of an enjoyment factor than, you know, being alone and like fucking kicking a soccer ball or tennis or like whatever sport. It's like, yeah, I could play with other people, but that would be like just mostly at school. And I guess a lot of the friends I made were just not as interested. So I guess that's probably why that never happened. But leading into the gaming, I was like 4, I believe, and the first game I got was the Super Nintendo, Super Mario Kart. I wasn't super into that one as much, but obviously I played the shit out of it because it was like my first game, and like, you know, gaming really taught me so much and helped my intellectual growth and just so many skills and critical thinking. And the first major game that really kicked things off was Super Mario RPG, or you know, Super Mario Legend of the Seven Stars. And then definitely the other defining
It's a great
one
game.
was Super Metroid. Those two are both in my top 10 list of games, you know, all time. And I just remember it felt as though reflecting on it, it feels as though that those games were there for me and helped guided me in ways I didn't understand so much more than my parents ever did. You know, it taught me to go on adventures, to persevere, to not give up and, you know, try again, to, you know, be whimsical and playful and explore different things like music, and you know, it had the friendship theme. Super Metroid was kind of like confronting your fears and diving into the unknown. You know, being willing to go the distance and to go off the beaten path and to take it on, you know, head on. Because I feel like with that and gaming in general, you know, I kind of had something to, one that I enjoyed and that was very stimulating, especially, you know, for not knowing that I truly had ADHD for such a long time until more recently that I kind of came to terms with it. You know, I had hints or glimpses of that, like I might have had it because I was super energetic and like so much more than other people, but it was kind of my escape, my entertainment. Like I never actively sought an escape, I just loved it. It was very, very good for an ADHD brain. You know, very stimulating, very, very challenging, you know, depending on what games you're playing. And I remember, like, I would always be just so good at it. And, you know, better than the kids that I was, you know, playing with would be. I mean, granted, I played it all the time, but, like, obviously that, like, you know, plays a factor in the enjoyment, is, like, when you're really good at something.
So it sounds like gaming was a great experience in your life and helped you through many challenges, as well as it being an avenue for you to explore and enjoy and get that stimulation that you didn't realize you quite needed. Did gaming ever reflect a negative side for you, or was it purely positive?
Oh, oh god, yeah, that's a fucking spot on one for one of the examples I would sometimes tell people. When I started playing World of Warcraft, I'm trying to think of if there was any negatives before then. Let me think. Because I played Flife, I played Two Moons, I played Night Online, and honestly, because I was in a lot of the younger years, not as much. I don't think there's as much like negativity in there, or like a reflection of like unhealthiness. But I definitely remember World of Warcraft. As much as I loved it, there was that toxicity that honestly was manifested in a fairly reasonable way. But when I made a rogue and I got him to max level, I would on the daily be on a, you know, a rampage in PvP, in world PvP. I would kill, you know, the opposite factions, auctioneers, bankers. I would kill people. I wouldn't camp them too much, but like I would kill anybody, doesn't matter, low level or not, who was flagged, always causing trouble. And I remember there was one day where I think he was a warlock, but I was sitting on one of the Stormwind bridges, and I just unflagged because like I'm, you know, super cheeky like that, and you know, rogues could be pretty squishy, so typically you're always in stealth, but like I would be like, fuck it, like I'll take all you bitches on, like fight me, come at me. And like he walks by And like I was just like waiting for him to attack me, and then he did the slash pat, you know, like kind of like comfort and console emote. And I was like super confused at like why he did that. And I thought it was just sort of like a you know, like an edgy kind of like, ooh, there's something wrong with you, or like, you know, something negative like that. But when I look back on it, you know, that person had so much wisdom and understanding for like what I was dealing with that like I didn't even realize. Cause like I was.
Could you elaborate on that?
Well, because he knew, like, you know, he had to have had some understanding of like, I'm this one rogue, right? Like everybody on the server knew me. They knew Silent Killer. And they were never like super, you know, mad or anything. In fact, I was friends with a lot of them. That was like the strangest thing. I was like a grand source of entertainment for them, you know, causing chaos. People would fight back. It kind of stirs things up. You know, I would do events. But in, you know, in this moment, especially with, you know, I had a rival that was like a warrior, and like we did not like each other. And I just remembered, you know, having like a vendetta against him, and also just kind of taking it out on other people. Like I said, I'd be killing anyone. But like elaborating on that, it's like he knew that like I was not okay. Cause like, why else would you do that in the way that he did? Cause he did it, and then he walked off. And like I know.
So you found it very comforting.
No, I didn't feel comforting in that. I just felt confused. I didn't like, because like I didn't feel like it fit that he was doing it in like a mean or malicious way, because of like the cadence or the timing of him doing it and him walking off. You know, like maybe I thought like, oh, he's too scared, he doesn't want to fight, so like the only thing he's gonna do is be like, oh, I feel so sorry for you, and then you know, I kind of had like that perception of it. But then like again, thinking about it, reflecting on it, I was like, oh no, like that wasn't it.
How much time had passed before you had come to that realization?
12 years. Yeah, I mean, I was like, what, 14 or so at the time, and I realized that like when I was like 26, and I'm 28 now. People, that was the thing, like I fucking, and like you could rationalize it like, oh, it's the game, it's PvP, like you're flagged, you know, the solution is don't be flagged, right? But like you know, I can still recognize that as being unhealthy to a degree, even if it's within a game where it's expected. And then like I think about just my relationships with everybody, and you know, again, I get it, it's a game, and like, you know, you could portray a character. And I remember people talking to me about it. They're like, yeah, you should be Silent Killer again. You should be that character, that thing. It wasn't me. It was like to be that thing.
It's a character, it's not.
Well, it's interesting how people saw it like that, but like it wasn't a character. That was me. And like I don't think people, and that's why I think that warlock on the bridge, like in that reflection, I think that he saw that it wasn't a character, and a lot of other people didn't. It was actually just a lot of anger and somewhat of narcissistic traits to kind of cope with things on, you know, subconsciously, and ego. And I remember after a while I did eventually kind of like mellow out. I know speedrunning, when I got into that gaming phase, kind of helped a lot with that, because like you only have so much energy to to spare when all of it is kind of focused on, you know, playing the game as best as you can so that you can go for a better time. And that, you know, getting emotionally attached to each run was sort of like very harmful, because like something could go wrong at any part of the run, and then you'd have to reset. And I remember like that was like a very humbling experience in my life to sort of, you know, speedrun so many different games, because it just sort of taught you to really reflect on the mistakes you made and the hows and whys, and just a lot of discipline. And it was absolutely a fantastic fit for fucking anyone with ADHD, because of, you know, it's very stimulating, and, you know, it helps you focus and kind of manage things. And it was super fun too, because like, you know, if you're playing a good game or a game that was good for speedrunning, it would be really, you know, fast paced and just, yeah, stimulating. So like I always felt really energized and fulfilled and happy, like for like the first 10 or so runs for most games, before it started to drift off and become a bit monotonous. But yeah. Yeah, that World of Warcraft example is definitely the negativity kind of showing itself. Just this very true portrayal of a rogue. I was often hidden, didn't show my emotions, treaded silently, silent, faded into the background. When things pissed me off, I would backstab or, you know, passive aggressive, take people out, that viciousness, the shadow. I truly was a rogue.
Can we talk a little bit more about that?
Well,
Maybe how that leans into your growing up alone and some of your family life as you were growing up?
I mean, it goes back to just not feeling loved, and in being alone, you have to learn how to, you know, teach yourself to survive, and a lot of those skills are akin to what, you know, rogues do, you know, both in middle school when I got bullied, and, you know, going on into high school a little bit before I kind of turned into a unnatural social butterfly, and, you know, floating from group to group. And it's like, it's not like some of these unhealthy things stuck around forever, but like they sort of happened in stages at different times. But like I would also pathologically and habitually lie to sort of gain favor, reputation, influence, empathy. You know, the funny thing was, in my mind at the time, I didn't think my life was so bad, but I would describe it as bad, and gain people's, you know, help people understand it, and not fuck with me, because like I'm already dealing with a lot. But to to my actual horror years later, my life was actually that bad. It wasn't a lie anymore, or it wasn't a perceived lie. It just actually, I grew up completely alone. I had covert narcissistic mother was never there. She would gaslight me. She would say, oh, I'm here to help you and listen to you, but like never actually follow through, or basically beat me down if I ever did, or just not care about what I was feeling or what was going on. It was always a checklist for what made her look better. Just going into that alone is like a whole subject. But
Well, we've talked a lot about some of the negatives. Maybe we can talk about some of the positives and how you've sort of, as you've talked about in the beginning, just sort of unstuck yourself from that place in your life.
Well, I would get
Is
to that.
there anything in particular you say you've learned, maybe, that might... anything core that's really stuck with you?
I guess I'll kind of zero in more on some of these things. Like, it's kind of nice to just hop around tangentially, just because like that's kind of how I operate in some ways. So growing up alone just kind of puts you into, for me, it was like there was so much emotions and fear and anxiety that would go on at different parts of my life, and a lot of that was amplified by the fact that like I had no one to turn to help. There was no like comfort in like, oh, I could just go to my mom or stepdad or whatever. It was just like, I gotta figure this shit out, and like that's the way it's always been. And that was really, just really stressful, and like I just didn't realize it. It was just like I said, it was like I was living my life underwater, and like things just didn't make sense. I couldn't hear anything. Feeling things felt very limited. I couldn't breathe. I had to teach myself everything. I didn't have a true friend until literally like a year ago when I met you. Like all the friends that I had were literally just, making the best of the situation. They're, like acquaintances, or like your superficial friends where like, yeah, you would have fun together, but like, would they actually be there for you in your time of need? Maybe. And even though some of them kind of were, we weren't actually really close, because they, in their mind, were sort of checking off the boxes of like, what would a good friend do? Did we ever talk about feelings? Did we ever connect? Did we ever, really just get closer and get to know each other and, be close friends? No. It was just, we hang out, we play games. That's it. Maybe we'll go to a event or party or someplace. But yeah. Alone. Even when I came to visit, from the military, it just felt like I wasn't home, and that I wasn't in the right place. I remember I had a friend that I went who joined the Navy, and he was in Virginia, and we went to like an amusement park. And like, it was fun and everything, but when we went back to the hotel, I had this massive anxiety of like, I don't feel right. I don't feel like I'm in the right place. And like, I had to leave. And like, I just couldn't understand why. And then eventually I realized it's because like, we weren't actually real friends. We weren't good friends. It was just entertainment.
What made you realize this?
For him specifically, the research form, the HWA, the Human Wellness Assessment, there was one day where I asked him to fill it out. And he said...
Would you, like to explain what the HWA is for anybody who might not know?
The HWA is a comprehensive mental health assessment or mental wellness assessment for like everything, you know, for the human existence and experience. So it's like physical needs, emotional needs, cognitive considerations, different wounds or trauma that you've been through, the way that you think, your learning style. Just really a comprehensive, as much as I could possibly imagine, research, and conceptualize to help somebody better understand themselves so that they could, you know, work towards living a more happy, peaceful, fulfilling, and meaningful life. So it was a pretty big project, and I had no help on it, and I was asking, you know, friends and people I met on VRChat to fill it out so that I could understand people better and maybe take that research somewhere. And it takes about 20 minutes to like maybe like a whole hour to do, depending on how explored people are. And when I asked him to do it, he's like, Pasco, I'll do anything for you, but like, I'm gonna be honest, I'm not doing that. And it was just like what the fuck? You can't. I'll do anything for you, just not that. And it really just...
It's not anything then.
So yeah, so it's not anything, and being that complete strangers filled it out, like literally I walked up to him and said, hey, I need help with research. It would probably be really helpful, you know, for other people, or it might help you better understand yourself. Complete strangers, and they had no hesitation doing it. So imagine how I felt with this person that I grew up, you know, many years with, literally like 11 to 17, 18, so like 7-8 years, and he's just like, nah, I don't want to do it. It's just like, okay, well, you know, you're clearly not a friend. You know, I needed help with this. It was serious, it was meaningful, it was meant to help other people, and you still can't, you know, spare 20 minutes to an hour of your time? Once? So I let him go. I straight up told him, I was like, hey man, this is really upsetting, and I'm not like super mad at you, but at the same time, like, I can't be friends with you either. Like, that just doesn't seem like what a good friend would, you know, do. I needed help, and you're just telling me no, like, I can't do that. I'll do anything, but I can't do that.
Have you ever had to cut off you've had to cut off relationships in a very sharp way like that?
Kind of. I mean, that's something to get into, because, like, you know, when you transition into being a healthier person, you have to start making sacrifices, and you have a very new and more open and vivid perspective of like what is healthy and what is good for you and what makes you feel good, and you know, you want to keep that ball rolling. And when you look at the people in your life, you start to examine like how much of a good fit they are, and like what do they, not that like, you know, people, you know, have to do something for you, but there's going to be a reason for having them in your life, and you start to look at, you know, these things critically. And I started, you know, one big example is you know, a friend I grew up with that, you know, I thought was my best friend, but again, it was just, you know, that superficialness. We spent a lot of time together, and he also was, you know, trans MTF, made that decision, you know, kind of later into the end of high school. And there was one day where we went out to eat, and, you know, again, I was coming back to visit from the military, and because like I was on the East Coast. I was stationed in Maryland at Walter Reed, and I come back, and we're going out to eat, and, like, you know, I'm visiting, and, like, you know, kind of expecting a little bit of more immediacy, you know, more like talking and catching up and just having, you know, some TLC, some nice quality time. And she was on her phone the whole time. I call it out, nothing's changing, and I'm just like, hey, this is gonna be like kind of the last time I'm here for a while. Doesn't really address it, and it just fucking sent me completely when the bill came, and then she was like, oh yeah, so, like, I don't have my wallet or whatnot on me. So I was like, what the fuck? So now I had to pay for both. And, like, the combination of all of that and just the downhill spiral that she seemed to be on is, like, you know, just talking about her in general is like a whole nother thing. But it just all added up to where I you know, drove her home, and then I was just like, I'll see you later, in a very kind of specific tone of like, I'm done. And then I didn't, and then cut out and deleted and removed from everything, because I was just like, I've done so much for you, we spent so much time together, and, like, you've repeatedly shown that, like, you only care about yourself and you're not really willing to reciprocate, and that's it. Done. Another time, fairly recently, was when I was getting out of another situation with the narcissist. I needed a place to stay because the Home Depot moving truck I was using, I had barely, there's an internal clock on the registers to do transactions for, like, checking vehicles back in or whatnot, and I had missed the deadline by like 5 minutes, and there was nothing they could do about it. They can't do an override, and I was, you know, stuck in Arizona because, like, I couldn't check the truck back in, so, like, I had to stay there. And I was calling, you know, people up in Arizona to see if, like, hey, could I spend the night? And nobody was answering, especially another friend that I grew up with. He literally read and ignored, you know, the text, both on phone and Discord. And I saw him in a channel with some friends, and, like, I know that, like, you could have made time to kind of answer, because, like, I had hinted that it was urgent, and, like, I didn't even have, like, I felt so uncomfortable, so fucking uncomfortable with the fact that I would have, so you're not answering your phone, you're not answering Discord, but I could have went in the channel that he was in with his friends, and I could have said something, but, like, I didn't, because I'm like, if I have to do all that just to get some help, like, no, fuck you, fuck that. I'm just, you know, you're not a friend, and I cut him off. And consequently, like, I had to, you know, just push out, like, another, like, 70 something for, you know, a night in a hotel. And I remember just sitting in the truck trying to reach out to people and getting to a point of, like, feeling, like, frigid cold, because, like, you know, no one was answering. I could have turned the truck on and maybe the heater on, but like, you know, I didn't want to have to pay more money for exhausting the gas or just anything else like that. And then just having to come to that realization of like, oh, it's another one gone. And then at that point, once the morning came and I went to Las Vegas because I was making a temporary transition before I went to Colorado, I just literally just cut everybody else out. Because when you critically look at the people in your life and ask yourself, you know, are they honest? Are they emotionally available? Are they reliable? Do you guys have things in common? Do you enjoy your time together? If you truly look at those check boxes wholeheartedly, you're probably going to find that you don't have as close of friends or as many friends as you think you do. That's why I really, you know, reiterate that in like everyone that I talk to. So yeah, growing up alone. Because I used to try and rationalize to myself like, oh yeah, I have friends. But I didn't. I didn't have friends. I didn't have good friends. They were just there for fun. So I really did grow up alone. And in the military. And under harass and abuse and more narcissistic abuse that carried on past my mother. I never felt loved. I never felt like truly appreciated and supported. People would appreciate the nice things I do for them, but like not who I was. I would hold the door open for people like everywhere, every day, especially at school. Ironically, there was like a little award thing for like, you know, best smile, most considerate person, whoever would be most successful, whatever. And somebody else who temporarily, you know, did nice things, considerate things, got voted in for that award. And he stopped doing those nice things after he got the award. But I kept doing it. I kept holding doors for people. I kept being nice, you know. And I remember someone saying like they were kind of like mad about that. Like, oh, like, and you still do these nice things. And like they got that award and you didn't. I don't even know why I shared that. I was talking about, oh yeah, the unlovable thing. I mean, because I basically learned from my mother that like I'm not lovable or like my feelings don't matter. I tried to like prove or just subconsciously like try and disprove that. Try and find somebody who would care. You know, whatever friends it was, I would walk around, you know, the lakes or just, you know, where we lived on the mountain there. Just walked around all the time, day and night, sometimes till like 3 a.m. Always just walking alone. You know, I would hang out with friends, but like there would be a time of like, all right, I got to give them a break. Can't be like hopping from friend's house to friend's house, never home again in the high school years. It got to the point of like where I think people just, because I was told that like some people would say like I just have like this sad look on my face or like the same look. Even some of the especially a specific girl that I hung out with, I was always chasing affection from girls, women. Like I just wanted to cuddle because it's what my mother never gave me. No love, no affection. I would literally, I wouldn't care about kissing. I wouldn't care about sex. It would just be cuddling, being held. I remember the day that this girl, I was hanging out with a lot, just straight up like, and she didn't want to say it out loud, so like she typed it up on her phone and she's like, "Do you want to have sex?" And I was just like, no. I'm like, I don't want to feel as though that you're pressured into doing that. And I know she wanted to anyways. She really liked me. She had like a hard high school crush on me. But I said no. And then later on, because I felt just so sad and I didn't want to hurt her feelings. I had attachment issues with relationships because of this. I remember telling her, like, I don't like you that way, and it really hurt her. And, like, it took a little bit, but we were still kind of, like, friends after that. But then eventually, she had met a guy who I guess she was still hanging on to me, and he told her to, like, cut me out of her life. And I didn't disagree with him. That was probably the right decision. A bit toxic, right? Like hearing that in general of like, oh, don't talk to these people. But honestly, that I agreed with it. Like it would be like this push-pull thing of like, I really like this person, but I only like them because I wanted affection, and we didn't actually have chemistry or anything going on between us. Because like my dating history was just always filled with like both desperate affection seeking, so I would literally just pick anyone who wasn't a complete psychopath, and I did get very lucky with meeting and the dating scene for guys is fucking rough, like no matter what year it was, like all these toxic expectations from whoever on dating apps. So not the healthiest way of going about it. I almost never like asked anybody out in person. So it was just all through dating apps, and I would just pick just someone that I was attracted to and that wasn't super mean. And then I would always end up finding out that like, military schedule would get in the way. They were faking being nice just because they liked the way I looked, or they wanted sex or whatever. It was always just like a short-term relationship and never went past about like a month or so. So it'd be like this concentrated point of hanging out, sex, whatever, and then just and then it would just disappear for some reason. So that kind of really didn't help, feeling loved. And like I was picking them. It was definitely me. Like I wasn't picking the right people. I wasn't going about it in a healthier way. I wasn't vetting them. I wasn't, looking at the red flags. I was just like, I desperately need affection because like my heart is like destroying me until I get this need met. So it was half unhealthy and half unfortunate circumstance. Actually, and then there was a couple times where there was somebody I met that was patient. They were healthy enough, and they would have went a longer distance with me, but I just subconsciously pushed them away. I was so fucking depressed that I couldn't bring myself to put any effort into the relationship. One of them was a nice looking blonde who was in pre-med, and she's a doctor now. Do I regret that? No, because like if I was being honest, like there wasn't like long-term chemistry there, but like still it could have been like a year or two relationship. But like I just pushed her away. like not feeling loved is probably like I had so many little T's, little traumas just being beaten into me from my mother not being there. Not lovable, not good enough, my feelings don't matter. So many things. And like, don't get me wrong, like there'd be parts of my life where like I would be, you know, I'd be happy, I'd be super thrilled, I'd be excited. I would still feel emotions at some point. But as I've described before, they would have to be like an 8 out of 10 intensity for me to feel them. Anything that wasn't super intense, it was like numbness, silence. So I just perpetually felt alone for a while. And I remember, you know, just again, just pushing people away. I remember going on like random traveling sprees alone, just walking around a bunch of places alone, you know, by myself. And to some degree that's, there's healthy independence, but like that was just, there was people that I work with that told me like, you know, they wanted to hang out, or like, you know, I wish we could have been friends, or you're a good person, you're good people, like we should hang out Taco Tuesdays. And I just, it's like I you know, I'd rationalized it with like, oh, we won't have chemistry, or like, you know, we won't have fun. How the fuck would I know that? I didn't even give him a chance. But in actuality, it's because like I just didn't feel lovable. Like I don't believe it. Happened like 5 times over the years in the military. Maybe a little bit more than that. There's at least like 7 to 10 people that made attempts.
How long were you in the military for?
5 years, 2011 to 2016. We didn't even get to the fact. And I don't think this is going to be a huge talking point. But yeah, I mean, like, growing up alone ties into feeling unlovable, and honestly just the cards I was dealt. But also the estrangement, the feeling of being ostracized, the feeling of like I don't feel like I have a home or fit in with like nearly anyone most of the time. I often hung around like the smart kids because like I felt some kind of comfort there. But like, yeah, I eventually came to terms with the fact that like, yeah, I definitely had pretty, you know, when I was younger, it was moderate to severe ADHD. Now it's mild to moderate, so it's like shifted on the lower half. And I was gifted. You know, I remember playing Around the World. It's like a little math card game in elementary school, and I would fucking smoke the shit out of everyone. I remember in middle school, I got A's in everything. I had perfect attendance, and there's like different periods of the year, sixth grade, where like the kids everyone else would be like super resentful toward me, and I realized that a lot of the bullying I got was like just their insecurity just being, you know, projected onto me. You know, getting like books knocked out of my hand, or, you know, just being messed with. I remember there was this one day where the teacher said we had to complete this pretty lengthy assignment, and everyone else besides me had thought she had said do one section of it. I thought she had said, and I was right, that we had to do the entire thing. So it took me like literally like 3 whole hours at home, which is like so much longer than like most homework would take. 3 hours straight of me sitting at the table doing this, like it was like a reading class thing or like vocab or whatever. And I showed up the next day, and I was the only person out of the 30 kids who had did it. And the teacher was very like shocked because she was just like, what the hell, like I told you guys to do this. And then there was the one person who raised their hand, you know, like, you know, who did do it. And I was like immediately praised, and for like the next, I think it was like a day or two, I was able to just play games. Like they had the board games or the stuff lying around in the classroom. I didn't have to do any of the work, and I just got to sit there and enjoy myself, while everyone else like sat there and did the work. And like just the amount of like resentment that kind of came from that. And there's another time we were in the computer lab, and I think it's called Type Racer, where like you would type things and you do math problems and it'd make the car go faster, and we'd race each other or race the computers. And I remember I would be like fucking lightning fast on that. I was just like and like just zooming. And one of the kids that I've actually hung out with before, Nick, who eventually, you know, moved, but he was just like, in the tone he said it in, he was like, look at that, like, you know, like, fuck, man, how could I ever get to that level?
Yes, sorry.
I just remember that, like, it wasn't even like, oh damn, that's pretty sick. It was just like, I hate you. I hate you, and I don't like myself. I'm disappointed in myself. Like, that's so depressing. And
Wasn't encouraging at all for you.
yeah. And like I kind of laughed it off. But I mean, like, there was just other instances of that, and they had this AM or AM math and AR reading, and like I fucking blew the math part like out of the water. I'd have all the points for like the entire quarter done in like a day or two, just like rapidly doing the math problems, do the little bubbles, scan it in at the desk. He gives me the next sheet. Yeah, just a lot of the kids, I mean, it just kind of explains a lot of that. And then combine that with the athleticism, because that added up. I was super active when I was young. I was super fast runner. You know, I was able to do some jukes and dodgeball, and you know, you run across the gym to the other side, grab a ball, run it past the middle line, and like, you know, if you get all the balls on one side, you'd win. That game was like a big highlight for me that I excelled at. Football, you know, because like they would, even if I couldn't catch very well at the time, like even if I caught a short pass, like I was gone. There was no catching me. Just all of the resentment and bullying I got for that. But then eventually the Unlovable thing caught up with me in high school, and I felt so depressed, and like, what's the point of everything? That like the grades slipped, or not even slipped, like just kind of started diving. Yeah, and I was just like super depressed junior and senior year. I mean, like I had happy moments, but like I just had like this lingering depression. Like I didn't even understand why. All I could really bring myself to understand is like, well, guess I'll go into the military, medical field. I like helping people. Navy seems good for that. Corpsman seems good for that. I got you know, I got the job, the MOS, and family just didn't seem to care. Friends didn't seem to care, besides Alex or Alice. And even then, not very supportive. More so mad that his source of, like, friendship or entertainment is leaving him. Didn't care about, like, me bettering my life or anything. He was legitimately mad that I was leaving, and, like, ended the friendship temporarily for that, until I eventually, like, walked up to him and talked to him about it later. Yeah. And, ironically, when I was in boot camp, I was actually called really fucking retarded and stupid because I didn't use my glasses, and then that leads into the eye issues, those 3 eye disorders I had. And, like, there's a whole thing later on about how eventually that became a serious problem that almost led to suicide. But, I think that kind of wraps up being alone for the most part. Friends, relationships, just kind of teaching myself how to be more of an adult and get what I need to do done. And there is a lot of happy things to reflect on, which I will talk about. My interview is going to be fucking long at this point, but oh well.
Do you want to talk more about your CI and how that sort of affected you?
Yeah, I mean, I think for the most part, people kind of understand the struggles of what gifted kids go through and just not being understood. You're ahead of the curve. It's hard to relate to people unless you find someone on the same path. And Jambi actually talked about this too. That's how I was able to kind of detect it, because I'm like, oh, you know, I've heard this before. I felt it in myself. Growing up alone, unlovable, the ADHD and gifted thing. So yeah, I was neglected in some ways, like obviously like 2000% emotionally, like no love whatsoever. I mean, like, so like my home life basically consisted of what can I buy for my kid so I don't have to physically or emotionally spend time with him. And the easiest and like most fucking gratifying solution to my mother was like, wow, he really likes this gaming stuff. Oh, you need another game so like you don't pay attention to how fucking absent of a mother I am? Like, yeah, here, have another one and another one. Rent it from Blockbuster, buy it, whatever. You can have it for your birthday or Christmas, doesn't matter. And the same would go for like any toys or whatnot. And like, you know, don't get me wrong, like I am grateful for those things, and obviously I'm not like a starving child in Ethiopia or anything, but like it doesn't take away from the fact that while my physical needs were met, I felt a massive like depression looming over me for not really having a strong reason to even be in this world. That's the detriments of not having emotional needs met, and I was just completely alone in that regard. Tangent. So leading to, well, yeah, because I did want to give credit to, like, you know, the good things in my life growing up. But it was, you know, you could describe it as like lower middle class, you know, had basic necessities. As far as like nutrition goes, oh yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Super neglected on nutrition. So I was super fucking skinny, and I had to fix that later with like, you know, doing a workout routine and eating a shit ton of calories. And, you know, I still do that today, but can't afford the budget for more food. I would get sick from like eating like hot dogs and hot pockets and stuff like that all the time. I remember having like bad diarrhea or even throwing up at times, and you know, just there's like no care for like what I ate. There was just no guidance on how to do things. And in fact, my mother also infantilized me, and whenever I would try to excel, because I had this theory that, and I could pretty much confirm this, that she hated the fact that I was so intelligent and that I was ahead of the curve, because it made her feel insecure, and it made her feel, you know, forced her to reflect on her own life and like what she was doing, how she didn't you know, chase her dreams, and how she was, you know, failing to be a good mother. So like there's times where like I would want to teach myself how to do laundry or cook and stuff like that, and it would be discouraged. Like, no, you can't do the laundry because you're gonna break this thing, or like, don't cook this like without, you know, me being here because I don't want you to burn the place down. Like there was no like encouragement for autonomy. And like again, the same goes for like just shut it down, shut it down, shut it down. You're too fast, you're doing too much. You can come and talk to me about whatever, but then she would just massively like criticize me and turn it into something about her. Yeah. Yeah, so like that was my home life.
And that sounds super tough. I mean, oh my god. Do you want to get into the more positive side now? Just sort of some of the things you're grateful for growing up. Some of the, maybe a positive experience you had.
Keep
really
reminding me, I'll get there. I just like to get all the negative stuff out of the way, and then I wanted to like combine it at the end. You've asked like really good questions so far.
everything. So, what do you want to talk about? Hopefully there's not too much negativity left.
Yeah, I know. It's I imagine that would be super heavy to hear a lot of this. Touch on the military a little bit before leading into the CI. So I had a lot of leadership that were definitely in the gray area and often in very corrupt and tyrannical and unjust things. Like I did have good leadership, and in fact, the one good, you know, supervisor I had, he is like forever, you know, as long as he's fine with it, you know, my professional reference. And he's from Serbia. He was kind of like a bit of a father figure to me. He understood me in ways that a lot of the other leadership didn't, and he helped, you know, encourage my growth and gave me compliments that like I had never really heard before. He was a very supportive figure for like the limited time that he had to even be, you know, around me, because like he was an E6 in the army, he was a supervisor, he had kids, and he still gave me more support than just, you know, a lot of people in my life. But I mean, yeah, the military, honestly, it was just a lot of abuse and tolerating people who would, you know, tell you to do things. They do it in a really mean and passive aggressive or just abusive way. Like, you know, leadership that would tell you to like, you know, oh, fucking tension, parade rest, fucking batter you emotionally. You know, you can't say anything. You try to say something, they fucking yell at you and tell you like you're fucking lying, or they try and blame something on you that you didn't do, or they would just fuck with you. And like a lot of that was happening, and I didn't have the mental health or state of mind to kind of report it. Like I would, sometimes I did, but like I would just be too scared to, because like we were just abused so much, and like I just had no room for that. And then like the whole unlovable thing, and you know, just the narcissistic abuse, that was really fucking painful. Super amplified because it mirrored, you know, some of the things my mother said and did. And I remember feeling, on a scale of 0 to 10, when I had CI, I remember getting to like a 3 or a 2, like that peak pain. when I was in the military, I only got down to about a 4 on like a suicidality scale. I just remember, yeah, I felt depressed. I thought about, you know, just romanticizing like, oh, life fucking sucks, and like, I don't want to feel this pain. It's been going on for so long. I would think about like, okay, like how would I do it? It would mostly just consist of just like jumping off a building, but like it was like the funniest thing. I'm like, well, what building would be tall enough? We had plenty of tall buildings around us, but for some reason, like I just didn't think that there were any that were like super tall, like Empire fucking State Building tall, that where it would be like justice, and like I didn't want to jump off a place where people would see me and then like be like traumatized by it. So I was like, that's like where the thought stopped, is like I don't know where I could go that would be tall enough and also not near people. And like I had that lingering for a bit, and especially after I got a reckless driving charge that I didn't admit that I actually did for the longest time. I was going 100 something in a 70, and I kept lying to myself. This is where that pathological lying comes in, from wanting to be loved. It carried over, and I would keep telling people, I was like, yeah, I was going 77 in a 70 instead of like 104. And I remember after like getting pulled over by the cop, that like I was like one of the lowest points I've ever been in my life, and like I was seriously like, I had a serious intent to kill myself for about like a minute, and then it passed, and then instead of like continuing on to like Virginia Beach, I would just turn around and went home and like just huddled like in bed when I got home about like, am I gonna go to jail for this? I didn't. I paid like a $1,500 fine. I lost my license and didn't know I lost it until 2 years later I got it reinstated, which is fucking insane. Cause like, if you would have gotten pulled over, that would have been a whole ordeal for like having your license suspended. Yeah. A lot of yeah. It's gonna be so tangential, but I hope it keeps it interesting. When I was yeah, the whole unlovable thing, like I was like such a unintentional fuckboy. Like I would look for sincere relationships, and I'd be like, yeah, I want something long term. And because I would do that in contrast to other guys that just wanted sex, a lot of the girls that I met would have sex with me on the first day, the first night of meeting them. So it was super jarring and unhealthy, and like I didn't even like want it half the time. It was just like it was like hard for me to enjoy too. Like it was just so not a good fit. And also like just not picking the right people, and not again, it just goes back to what I said, not really pointing out or vetting the people that I choose to be with, and just so desperate for that affection, because like this was also helping combat the depression. And like I did meet, the first person that I truly loved was an Indian girl, but like she was having such a hard time with her own life that like it just didn't work out. And it was like really hard to let go of that, because like it's your first love, and like that's just like all I had to kind of like look forward to in life, was like find a potential partner to basically like save my life, because like I just felt so fucking desperately unlovable, and like didn't understand what was going on. At one point I had made up to my military supervisor at the time. I just casually mentioned to him, I was like, oh yeah, I used to be like homeless and in poverty, and some of that was partially true, because like I would be outside and in the night for so long back in Arizona that I might as well kind of portrayed being homeless, floating from house to house. yeah, I told them that, and they got like super concerned, and they forced me into outpatient therapy to where I was super upset about that because I thought they were trying to pin a diagnosis on me to hurt my career or like get me kicked out or whatever. And they were the malicious types to kind of do something like that. So I didn't trust them. I get dragged to an outpatient appointment, literally rips an E4 and an E5 out of their daily schedule and activities to drive me to this appointment. I get there, I'm super angry. The fucking psychologist or whoever I had was like a complete apathetic oaf and like did not connect with him whatsoever. And and he fucking made me take like a 600 question test, and he was like trying to point out inconsistencies with it, and I was so fucking pissed off that I was just like, look, I don't want to be here. I want to go. Call whatever, you know, our fucking I forgot what E8 is in the army, but it was like our sergeant who kind of like was the director of like the whole mental health operation or whatever. So like inpatient, outpatient, call him, and you know, and then he's just like, yeah, so like I feel like there's something you're not telling me, and like, you know, I just didn't want to fucking talk to them because it came from such a nasty, it was done in such a forceful way that like I don't think anyone would be receptive to that. So I left, and yeah, that was that. The rest of my military career consisted of them being fuckers and trying to keep me on night shift as long as possible, also trying to mess with me, and they went out of their way to make sure that I went on a deployment to Cuba. So like it was me and then another guy who like actually wanted to go. So like they could have picked from like 20 different staff, but no, they fucking went out of their way to make sure that like I went. But that is a positive, because me going to Cuba and, you know, seeing the detainees and that, you know, just that experience with like people of different cultures and making army friends and having a lot of time to think and reflect myself. I was like a baby vulture dad, because like there's this baby vulture that like flew onto my shoulder, and like he was like the base pet for a while. And then also meeting Leo, who is my second professional reference and friend. And yeah, it was actually a good time, for as much as some other people resented it. You know, we had games to play, we could do sports, we could go to the beach, infinite food at the galley, and like the work was kind of like really boring and depressing sometimes, but like we still made the best of it, and it was a good experience. Out of my entire 5 years, that 7-8 month deployment there was the best experience. And then I got my back tattoo when I came back. So, because like when you're on deployment, you fucking pocket a lot of money. Like everything's paid for and you get paid extra, so it's like you're just at a lot of disposable income. Leading toward the end of military career, I was doing my bachelor's degree as this was going on. It had actually started in Cuba, because like that was my 3-year mark, and I was able to fully use my benefits on top of tuition assistance. So post 9/11 and tuition assistance, I was trying to take as many classes as possible to fucking get as much as I could out of it. Sometimes to where it was like 3 to 5 classes on top of being, you know, night shift and doing work and other things and military bullshit. But I was doing it, and I did it. But getting closer to the last year. That's when my eyes started. Well, at first it came across as dizziness. I remember the first time I was on day shift, because I literally went to a doctor and said, write me a note to get me on day shift and get them fucked up if they don't listen. And it worked. I was walking into a room, and it was like I almost like lost consciousness for like a second, and like I grabbed the wall. And that was like the first time where the ocular pressure had built up to a point of where it was going to take me down 2 years of very painful on and off misery of pressure, of eye pain, of headaches, of cognitive dysfunction. It was like I phrased it as like I had a 30% handicap on my intelligence because of the pressure in my head. And I didn't have any idea that it was because of the eye disorders. I got that sense of dizziness, and I started getting all these other symptoms, and like I thought it was something temporary because I had just come off night shift after 3 years, and like that's also why I wanted to switch, is I was getting dizziness and headaches and stomach issues, and like night shift was like fucking me up. But in actuality, it was like mostly just like my eye disorders, and I had no idea. So
if you don't mind explaining, what are these eye disorders?
okay, so basically imagine if you've ever felt eye strain before, because like you look at a screen too much or you're awake for so long. But like clench your fist as hard as you possibly fucking can, and then imagine that feeling in both eyes, and you can't let go. You can't. It doesn't stop. It's just always there. It's like a headband around your head that's like fucking trying to squeeze your temples until your brain pops or your head explodes. Just pressure, always there. And it affected everything. It'd be painful to stay awake. It'd be painful to go to sleep. I couldn't sleep in because it hurt. Like, I felt really dumb and slow because like it was giving me headaches, and I was getting dizzy occasionally, and like I would escape through, like I changed my entire like life setup from like nutrition and how I slept and exercise to try and fix this. I'm like, okay, there's got to be a way to deal with this, and like that provided relief. But I want you to imagine like just this up and down hill that eventually would go, de-escalate into like this extreme level of like pain and like suicidality. Like I would exercise and it would get better, but then it would fade away. Better, and then it would fade away. I used to like exercise and be good for like, the month, then 2 weeks, then 1 week, then the pain and the dizziness and all the symptoms would come back every other day, and then the same day, and then it would only last for a few hours after I worked out. So it was like getting to like a panic range, because it's like, what the fuck do I do about this? I was like reaching levels of desperation of like, do I do like weed, or like go to the doctor, or like, I mean, like you'd think you would go to someone early on, but like I had no idea what the fuck it was. And eventually I did go to an optometrist and he gave me glasses, and like that helped for like a little bit, but then it was like a brick wall, and then like the symptoms all came raging back even fiercer than before. I did neglect to mention that I had got laser eye surgery, and a lot of my symptoms before they kind of came out in full force, like I had headaches every now and then, and the laser eye surgery fixed all of that. But I had ended up going back to my laser eye surgeon, and then he finally pointed out that the symptoms I was describing, and this fucker he knew the day I got surgery, or when I started, meeting up with him, he knew that I had this, but he didn't say anything because he wasn't getting paid for it. He didn't have to tell me. maybe I wouldn't have gotten laser eye
No
surgery
way.
if I had known. But when I drove 8 fucking hours, or basically Ohio to Maryland to go to this appointment, he seemed like a narcissistic fucker and didn't really care and was like trying to I'm trying to be a good doctor by showing you my screen and explaining to this very diligently, and like just this stupid condescending attitude. And at the end of it, he was like, yeah, so you have convergence insufficiency. And like, I was like, oh, okay, well, fuck, like, what do I do about it? And like, is there anything you can do for me right now? Because it was just like, I had to drive 8 hours with this fucking shit. And like, driving made it more painful. And like, I would have to drive home, dealing with that. And like, at the time, I wasn't like lathering myself with Bengay or peppermint oil. So I was just straight up dealing with it, which is a fucking level of misery and suffering that like I wouldn't, as they say, put on my enemies, because like it was just pure torture and agony. He was just like, yeah, you got to get vision therapy and just find somebody who's like board certified. And I was so upset because like I drove 8 hours just to hear that, which could have been a phone call. And he didn't have any pain relief. He didn't have any exercises. He kept just shoving me aside and saying like, oh, it's not within my scope and what I learned. And in fact, he was getting pissed at me because I was asking for ways to help. And it was reminding him of like that he wasn't competent in that area. So eventually I set up an appointment for a vision therapist in Kentucky that was nearby. He was also a fucker because he prescribed me glasses that did help, but you're actually supposed to do eye exercises like every day, and in office exercises to know like how you're progressing. But instead he just kind of gave me these glasses that helped for like 6 months, and then the symptoms came back raging again. And then I was like, okay, well, I need to find another vision therapist, and that eventually led to me finding one in Colorado that has been very successful. But yeah, there was one day in Ohio where I knew that like if this kept up, I wouldn't be able to do my master's. I wouldn't be able to become a legal therapist. And what fucking reason would I have to live if I have to just suffer in this pain every day? Everything would collapse. I'd have no reason. And I remember just falling to the floor in just agony, like contemplating suicide, the most serious I ever had in my life. Just on the floor, hands on my head, trying to just relieve the pressure. And then I got back up onto the computer and started looking for more ways to relieve the pain, to buy myself more time. That's when I went to, I forgot to mention that part because that's when I went to my laser eye surgeon, and then the whole glasses that didn't work. And then when that 6 months came up and I was like still trying to make my way to Colorado, he gave me a sheet of other stuff that would help, and there was like color light therapy and eye stretches. The eye stretches bought me more time, but eventually that wasn't enough. And that's when I had made it to Colorado, like just in time to where I would start doing, other exercises and color light therapy. And the symptoms slowly went from an 8 out of 10 to 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 4, 3, 2, 1, 3, 4, 2, 1, 0, 2, 1, 0, 0, consistent. And that's where I'm at now, as far as that goes. Still have to endure the pain of tolerating the glasses, but like I can take them off whenever I want, and then I'll be back at a 0 again as far as symptoms go. As far as the eye test went, I was massively below average on like all eye skills. So I want you to imagine that I had symptoms of ADHD. I had these eye symptoms. You know, nutritionally like malnourished, or like, you know, just unhealthy foods. I had so much of this stuff going on, and my parents did absolutely nothing about it. They got me glasses because, like, how fucked up would it be for their kid to go to school and complain to teachers that I can't see or whatever? And as a narcissist goes, if it makes them look bad, they can't stand that. So of course, you know, my mother had to check off the box of, oh, he has glasses, I'm safe, all right, you know, but all these other things that were going on, it's like, does it make me look bad? No, he's just I don't know, a super, you know, he's a kid, he's growing up, he's learning things, he, you know, just completely find a way to discard whatever problem I was dealing with. I remember at some points they actually said, there's something wrong with you, and I'm like, well, if there's something wrong with me, why aren't you helping? I remember saying that multiple times. I always seemed super tired, I always seemed super sad. I remember there's so many examples of that, but like, I don't want to like run this interview forever, so you get the gist of like what a narcissist is like. And then going into the identity piece, I always felt so hurt that I wasn't following my passion, that I was neglecting my inner child of like wanting to save the world and do something bigger, something more. I remember hating working in that inpatient unit because of how they treated the people there. And like I had such a irrational look at the mental health field. And rather than looking at how I could fight to make it better alongside other people that were doing the same thing, I just pushed it away as like, I don't want to be a part of a system that fucks people over like this. When in reality, I needed to be the person that didn't. So that put my career on hold for like the 2 years while I had the eye issues. And then eventually, as you know, that started to get better and I had more room to breathe, you know, there was at one point where I after some state hopping, like I went to Missouri, Whiteman's Air Force Base, for a nice job as a mental health tech that paid a lot, and they decided they didn't want me anymore for very unjustified reasons. Like, they looked at the numbers and they're like, well, we don't need another one, so fuck this contractor. Removed the position, made up some stupid stuff like I was hard to deal with and I was an indirect threat, and I had just signed my lease, had to break it, threw on $5,000 in debt. The company that had hired me on offered me a position to go to Ohio so that I could be a recruiter. And when the eye issue started flaring up, I couldn't do that anymore. And I went down to be like just a front desk receptionist. And then, you know, this ties into figuring out how to help my eyes get better. Because like at that time, I was like, career-wise, identity-wise, I'm like, I know I was like born to be a healer, a therapist, a counselor. And I got into my master's program, and from there on it was like, okay, how I know what I want to do, I have the vision, how am I going to do this? And that kind of leads closer into today. What was the question that you had asked? Because you were what did you had asked before?
just sort of getting into the positives, anything from your early childhood that you were really grateful for or really stuck with you, maybe a very positive experience you might have had.
Yeah. So now that I got a lot of the negatives out of the way, it's kind of like, well, most people would kind of hear that and be like, well, I can't imagine like how you didn't kill yourself sooner, like what helped you get through a lot of these things. And I did mention it before with the gaming, massive protective factor, and thing, you know, gave me reason to keep on going with all the different genres and the stimulation and World of Warcraft, MMOs, all super happy and enjoyable. I would play with friends all the time. We would have tournaments with Time Splitters Future Perfect and other games, and like it would just be, you know, that's like one thing that was always super positive, is just like gaming helped keep breath in my lungs. It helped keep color in my heart and soul. It kept me alive. I mean, like, there's other spot memories of just different people or like parents of like the kids I hung out with that did super nice things. I remember being fond of elementary school and like all the stuff that was going on, because like it's nice to learn things, and like I was super smart and ahead, you know, it felt like ahead of people and super active, and you know, playing with like a lot of the kids a lot. I remember holding the door in the back of the school, because I would flip between, you know, before the school opened, I would hang out in the back doors, and then I would go to the front doors. And when I was at the back doors, I would hold the door open for staff, and I remember them being like super like, oh, that's cute, and like keep that up, you know, as you get older. And then I remember I had this toy that like, it was like a wind-up propeller toy. You like pull it, and it'd be like this little circular helicopter thing, or plastic, you know, top, where like when you pull it, it'd like spin, and I would, you know, play with like pretty much like the whole fucking school out at the front with that. And it was really fun to go underneath the roof before the, you know, you would go into the doors. When you pull it, it would perpetually spin on the ceiling, and then eventually after like 5 seconds it would come down, and one of the kids would catch it, and then when they caught it, I would hand the launcher over to them, and then they would do it, and we'd sort of like pass it around. I remember that kind of thing being a highlight. There was a lot of sports stuff, and like there was a little like town that had festivals or like farmers markets, and like the dark part about that is like, you know, my mother would come and drop me and my sister off and then just disappear, right? So that's the dark part about it. But the nice part about it was, you know, free to sort of go around and explore different shops, the park, you know, meet some kids every now and then. I mean, that was nice.
Would you say you had a lot of freedom then?
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, freedom was always there. I remember there was one time where my mom decided to be a parent and be like, you shouldn't stay out past like fucking 2 or 3 a.m. and like, it was so random. Like, I had done shit like that all the time, but there's just this one night where she decided to care, and it was just like, what are you doing? Like, I was like low key, like just sort of like kind of fighting back against her. I was just like, I don't even remember how I did it, but she sort of just stopped caring again after that. It was just like this little bump. But yeah, I mean, it was so much freedom to the point of like, I remember again, it was like another random point of them caring, and like they almost called the police because like I just didn't come home for like extended periods at a time. And then they stopped caring about that, and then I literally remember I packed up my stuff and like stayed at a friend's house just indefinitely. Especially when right before I was like leaving for the Navy. I just didn't want to be there. And they didn't care. And when I came back, they wanted an apology from me. That's how you know you have a fucking narcissistic parent. Your kid is never home and just packs up their shit and leave. And you don't fucking think anything is wrong with you? You don't think you didn't do anything wrong? And then when they do come home, it's like, yeah, you need to apologize to me for fucking doing that to me. And that kind of thing happens, like, every now and then. They didn't care. They only cared if it would be a poor reflection on them, or if it actually might involve the police. And then that kind of reminds me into anything parent-teacher conference related, or anything that would need a parent's signature. Always avoided those. Like any way I could. But slipping too much into the negatives there. Positives. Well, as I mentioned, you know, a lot of that freedom there, gaming. Let's see. High school actually kind of became a lot more social. Out of that desperation for feeling loved, I did kind of learn a lot. I learned how to read people because I did a lot of people watching. I sat down with different groups, so I would hear a lot of different things and diversity and different cultures, because like we had, you know, all kinds at our school, surprisingly. So I mean, like, yeah, I would say that was a good thing, but like the number one protective thing was the innate perseverance that I had learned, you know, so early on. Like, never give up, always keep trying. You know, tough out the pain, even to a fault. And were you asking?
This might be a good point to go from there then. What are the things you feel like you've learned from your childhood that's really helped you get to this point? Or anything you'd like to give advice on, or something you feel is very core and important to you?
Well, it's interesting because like normally we would sort of, you know, we talked a lot about you know, problems in the past, things I've overcome, and like I don't really have any problems I'm dealing with like in the present, other than like, you know, finding a healthy partner, because like the last person I was seeing kind of fell through. Wasn't super upset about it, but it's just kind of like, ugh, another one. And I already know how to go about that. It's just kind of getting myself out there, common interest areas, like going to conventions and cons, and, you know, staying away from dating apps if possible. And like as far as
finding a healthy partner, something that's one of the main things you're sort of working towards right now, or is there anything else?
Well, I mean, the only other, and like, call it quest, the only other main quest I had was sort of kicking off my career, and now that I've gone through such a fucking arduous path of, you know, getting through the bachelor's, getting through the master's, you know, both were like shitty programs, shitty professors, like unorthodox things going on, you know, 3.4 in the bachelor's, fucking 4.0 in the master's. I'm going through my, you know, I didn't finish my practicum, which was a horrible fucking site to intern at, but, you know, did it, miraculously found that one in the midst of COVID. And then also, after I left there, you know, I took a huge fucking risk to find another one, managed to find it, and push myself through the other candidates and secure it. So really, as far as like career wise, like I've definitely, you know, fought for it on top of, you know, the research and the other personal interests for helping people, really supporting that and you know, making myself stand out amongst other people. But yeah, like career wise, I'm in my internship. It's gonna be for like the next, you know, 9 months starting August, and then in 6 months later I'll have graduated, and then I'll be able to apply for my provisional license. 2 years after that I'll have my actual license. So like, I'm not too worried about that. Found a really good site, a really good supervisor, supportive people. So that's not really like on my concerns, because I feel as though that's sort of like a gliding path. But yeah, as far as like, you know, finding a partner, the strange thing is like deep down I know that that's something that I want for the long run, but in the immediate I'm like, I don't really feel like, I don't have that strong like I need this. And like that's how I know I've healed from the unlovable thing. The unlovable wound is that the gravitational pull to find a partner used to be so strong, unbearably strong. And now it's, you know, I just broke up with the last person I was seeing, we went our separate ways, and I was upset in the way they did it, because they did it over text, but like I was still fairly unfazed about it. It didn't really bother me, you know. I was like, I just got my internship, so like I was on cloud nine, and yeah, going about doing these interviews and trying to find a way to actualize my childhood ambition of like, how do I save the world and make it better? Tangent.
Yes. So you say you've been able to really deeply heal from this feeling of being unlovable that's sort of pervaded a lot of your childhood, unfortunately. Would you care to elaborate some on how you actually went about healing from something like that? Because that's, I mean, it's a pretty big deal.
Yeah, and then that kind of goes back to your original question, right? Of what was it? The yeah, how you got through these things and what helped and advice that you give to other people. So I outlined this in the HWA. So if you're watching this right now and you've made it this far, because like it's definitely going to be into like the 2 or 3 hour mark, so I applaud you for that. Thanks for watching.
Congratulations.
Yeah, congratulations.
Thank you.
But you know, I outlined everything in that form of like things you need to look out for. And so the thing about like me giving advice and guidance is it's like there's so much, because like, you know, I'm, you know, therapist, counselor guy, and like I just have so much compacted that it's like hard to really condense it. But using the HWA as sort of like a reference, it's like, okay, first thing you definitely want to be aware of is your environment, like who you surround yourself with, whether that's your friend, your so-called friends and family, and or guardian or whoever's taking care of you. you really need to critically look at your environment and be honest with yourself. That's why I asked that truth question. Be honest with yourself is like, is this healthy or not? What does healthy look like? Seriously, critically, and honestly look at, your life and your environment and yourself, and start to ask questions like, is this good for me? Am I going where I want to go? Like, be so, so inquisitive, so passionately inquisitive with yourself. Embrace pain. It's your friend. It's helpful. It's growth. Environment is just, it's so critical, because like I was surrounded by narcissists. I was surrounded by friends who didn't really care about me. I didn't, like, if I would have, and like I did have good friends. Like I did have two that I didn't mention. But like, just knowing that the people you surround yourself may be holding you back from growing and being healthy and living and being happier, and that when you make a transition from being unhealthy to healthy, that people are going to resent you for it, or even if you're like a gifted kid or you have ADHD and you really excel at something, people are always going to bat you down, because like it makes them insecure about them not pursuing their dreams or putting in the work to excel at something. Like, my heart goes out there for so many of the people who excel at something, and that people want to put them down, because people are jealous of when you have your wings out and you can fly and they have to walk. They will do everything they can to shoot your wings out. So environment, just really, yeah. So like reflecting inwards and just being like, yeah, like, why am I feeling this way? Really start to work on that emotional intelligence. Start to figure out, what's right, what's wrong. Embrace pain and build your stress tolerance. I'd say any human being is truly defined by their capacity to endure stress, that their level of stress tolerance. If there is ever a skill or something that you needed to really work on, that would be it, because that is forever going to determine the trajectory of your life and how you go about stepping outside your comfort zone, and your ability to stay outside your comfort zone, to grow and learn and process. One key tip that really dramatically changed my life is I started typing and writing all of my thoughts down. So if you're the type of person who's creative or has racing thoughts or has so many things jam-packed in your head, I started typing it all out. I started writing it all out. Like, I did everything I could to keep doing that. I literally have like I've lost count, but I think it's somewhere around like 3,000 pages in Google Docs of stuff that I've written down, or copy and pasted images or quotes or my own thoughts, research, just getting it all out there. That dramatically changed how efficient and functional I went about my life, and starting to plan for my future. At one point I let's see. I'm trying to focus on actually how like I healed through the Unlovable thing, and I kind of dipped into like visions of values and like career stuff. But so we'll focus on the Unlovable part and kind of like how I work through that. Yeah, that goes hand in hand with the reflecting and the asking yourself questions, because when I got a text from my mother one day that said I'm a bad mother, that caused me to go through my entire childhood in my adult mind and try and figure out why she said that. These are things that you should do on your own without needing something external. Just think about it, process it, reflect on it, ask questions. I know that it's going to be scary. I know it's, you know, emotions can be very hard to deal with for so many people. But then that goes back to that pain tolerance, that stress tolerance. You know, when you accept your emotions as if it was a wave coming in and leaving, it won't stay there for long. The more you breathe in and accept what you're feeling and don't try to fight it, don't try to suppress it, don't try to run away from it or distract from it, it gets so much easier. The problem is like, I had suppressed for my whole fucking life, and the second I reflected on, and this is where I really let go of like the 2,000-pound backpack of emotional baggage. It was the moment I looked back and realized that no one loves me. Not my mother, not my stepdad. And even though my biological dad tried to claim that he loved me, he still didn't. It was at that moment where I let out the deepest cry of my life. So much so that I got almost severe tremors. I went numb in my body. It was literally the most earth-shattering emotional experience I ever had. To finally come to that conclusion after 2 decades. And then I just started processing it and reflecting on the positives, putting, you know, positive reframes, you know, drawing good things from the past, understanding to take away the anger. Just a lot of crying, you know, about 2 decades worth of crying to catch up on, and it spanned over the course of 2 years. Granted, I could have been more proactive with it, but when it got to the point where I was doing it like every other day to a week, eventually I reached a point somewhat recently of where I felt like a click. Like I was done. I wasn't sad when I thought about certain things anymore. I could kind of smile about it and didn't bother me. I had, instead of having a negative image of the event, I replaced it with a positive, and it stuck. Certain songs I listened to didn't, you know, wasn't as tearful anymore, or at all. It was just a very consistent and positive, you know, reflection, just processing things, understanding, coming to terms with things, accepting. And I did that consistently for 2 years. No therapy, just my own research of understanding mental health and just kind of, you know, going about it and doing myself. Not to recommend that to other people. I think, you know, I was very lucky in my revelations and how I came to terms with things, and that I'm gifted in certain things as a healer or a therapist would be. Definitely go see a therapist. It'll make it way easier and faster. And I'm still going to when I have time and resources. But yeah. On top of that, I didn't feel like that wound was fully closed, or I felt like it wouldn't have been fully closed until, you know, you actually meet somebody who does love and care about you. So if you don't feel like you're lovable, well, it's unfortunate to say that, like, you definitely want to heal through it and see a therapist so that you can start choosing and surrounding yourself with better people. But I felt a large part of healing through that was meeting Lily and a couple other select people who kind of helped be supportive. So that's kind of how I moved through that one. Just a lot of processing, a lot of crying, a lot of positive reframing. You could basically say it was meditation at some point. And all, you know, a lot of it was just listening to music and just just reflecting, and whatever emotions I had, I felt, I experienced, I let them out, I accepted them, just repeatedly. Because like I had been suppressing and feeling nothing for like 20 years, and then finally I just let it out. I was also brought up, you know, that like you shouldn't cry, and it was probably the most damaging thing that you could ever tell to any human being is to don't cry, or suppress it or hold it in. Within reason, like, you know, you'll want to be polite in certain circumstances, but like if you're alone especially, like, yeah, you fucking let that shit out. Crying is healthy.
Crying is definitely very, very healthy. So is there anything else you would like to touch upon before we sort of wrap things up here?
Kind of the identity, like, yeah, you don't want to suppress what you actually want to do, and that you should definitely follow it. And that it will grind you to dust or to death if you push away your dreams and your things that you want to do. You know, I like to think of it as like you have a cup, and, you know, putting aside the things you want to do or your hopes and dreams is like sort of like poking a hole in it, and eventually the hole gets so large that you can't give yourself any other pleasures or ways of coping with it, and it just becomes too great. And you hear about elderly suicide kind of reflecting upon those things of like, I should have done this and that when I was younger, or like they have a bunch of regrets. And, you know, I mean, you even heard it within, you know, some of the things I talked about. It was really painful to sort of push away my, even just like my, you know, I'd say like my baseline ambition of just being a therapist. Like, yeah, I do enjoy, you know, helping people work through their issues, but I want to help as many people as I can on a large scale. Like, I want to go big with that. And I'm just trying to figure out like how to do it. And sometimes I honestly need to take a break from that, because like it's super, it's very heavy. And it's very heavy and complex and a lot to think about. It's taken me on quite a fucking journey that not a lot of people go on ever in their life. And I plan to keep continuing to walk that path, even though it's, you know, very difficult. But, you know, if I don't, you know, who will? There's only so many people that are fighting the same cause, and we need as much help as we can get. So yeah, I mean, just on that,
That's... Go ahead.
I was just saying, just on that identity and dream piece, you know, you got to, if you really want to figure out who you are and what you value, you have to just get out into the world and start trying things, work different jobs, research, just throw yourself in there, and also try things you feel like you won't like. So that way, if it's true, you have a very large and bright fucking beacon of what to stay away from, so that you can head in the complete opposite direction towards something that you will definitely like. Do not suppress the things you want to do, your dreams. It's just a matter of tolerating stress, you know, building up that capacity to endure, you know, the pain and struggles. Because if you have the why, you know, I want I want to start a business, I want to, be a therapist, I want to join the military, then, and it's satisfying to you. It pulls you in. You will love the fact that of achieving this dream or this goal. You have the why, then the how won't matter. But the trick is that the why has to be compelling enough. It has to be so juicy and satisfying and flavorful and desirable that you will do whatever it takes to get there. And a lot of that is self-exploration and throwing yourself out into, out of your comfort zone and trying different things. Because you'll never know until you kind of get pushed into a situation where you can't back out of it and you have to deal with it. And I say it took that happening to me about 3 times before I just started doing it on my own. And the growth skyrocketed from there. That was about the time that I started just habitually writing things down on a regular.
Those are all excellent things. Like, I could not have said it better myself. Like, it is all totally true, and it'll take you very far. And I mean, you're proof that it has taken you very, very far.
I mean, for everyone who ends up watching this and gets to this part, my advice and my guidance and my statements are spread across all of the interviews that I've done. But if I had to maybe say something for my own, kind of reminds me of my values in a way. Be who you are, unapologetically. Be a better version of yourself each and every day, so that it's more tolerable by those around you. Persevere fiercely in the face of the crushing adversity that everyone inevitably faces, especially when they chase their dreams. Make time for yourself physically and emotionally so that atrophy doesn't weigh you down to a point of holding you back from achieving your dreams. Let go of many things. Reflect on your life and the meaning of life and many things that are existential. Let go of as many of those things as possible. They say that life is what you make of it, and that's really all it is. There is no static meaning that human beings have to live. It is what you create. There is no pressure to live a certain way or leave a definitive legacy, because all that matters is what you feel when you're still breathing. You don't have to hold on to that pressure. You don't have to do anything. It's your choice of how you want to live so that it is most enjoyable for yourself and hopefully for those that you help along the way. Life is just physical and emotional survival. You do everything that you can to set yourself up so that you are safe and financially secure, so that you can feed yourself and take care of your loved ones. And if you live comfortably, presumably in a first and second world country, you will have to understand your feelings so that you do not have so many holes in your cup that you're too stressed, you reach depression, and you eventually feel as though life is not worth living. You must understand what you feel and why. just let go of so many things and start understanding yourself. It really just started all with a question for me. Why? And also letting go of the why at the same time. There's balance in so many things that we understand.
Thank you. I think that speaks a lot through these interviews and helping a lot of people to push forward with their lives. So, thank you. You're finally awake. You got pulled over by...
Well...
Stop, you have violated the law.
God, shut up. I'm like about to do my model. Okay. So as I look at this city, I kind of think of it as the place that I once was. I've swam throughout my life. I've taken many steps. And I'm finally at the part where I can come above the water and start to breathe. And enjoy my life. And find people that truly care about me. And that I can leave everything down here in the past.
Spent a long time in the ocean, but I think it's safe to say that you've finally found people who care about you and a place where you can really feel at home. And I'm just so proud of you for the progress you've made. I just want you to know that your knowledge and ability and perseverance means so much to me, and I'm eternally grateful for it, and I only hope we can continue to thrive above the ocean. So, we met in VRChat for the first time, I think about a year or two ago. We're in like some karaoke world, I think just the VRChat karaoke world, and we were just like a spin the bottle room or whatever. I can't quite remember off the top of my head, but I remember we were with a group of people. I had like been introduced to you for the first time because it was like a friend of a friend thing, like a mutual friend and all that. And that night was absolutely incredible just because we stayed, me, you, and there was another person there, and us three sort of stayed in that room for hours and hours. Like I can't even like the time just completely whizzed by. And that entire time, I remember one thing kept, we had a couple, jokes going throughout our conversations, you know, just typical fun, lively stuff, some deep stuff here and there. Of course, your deep life topics, which I always thought was, you know, something we really connected with off the bat. You know, we were able to have such deep and thoughtful conversations in a way that's usually not always even comfortable for some people to talk about in their relationships outside of themselves and like really, really close people. But for us to do so, you know, right away, like I think spoke a lot to me personally.
Mm-hmm. Me too.
And the entire time we were on, we called it like the same wavelength, because we were just like, we're describing experiences we've had in our lives and like the way we think about things and just like, you know, little idiosyncrasies and all that kind of stuff. And so much of it we like related to and we were able to connect on. And overall that night just went super well. And following that night, we started hanging out more and more, late night Discord calls where my goodness, we can talk longer than I would ever expect at first. We say we're gonna talk for 5 minutes, and it's, you know, at least 5 times that amount. So it's usually, if we say 1 hour, it's 5 hours. If we say half an hour, it's whatever, 2.5 hours from there. We always end up talking a super long time, and it's always felt lively, casual, comforting, as well as thought-provoking, which is something that I really appreciate in my life and my conversations. And I think over the times that we've sort of had our friendship and have talked about things, there's been a lot of here and there disagreements about certain things, and maybe 1 or 2 minor hiccups along the way, but ultimately things that have been we've able to confront and move past in a way that's been both productive and helpful for me, and I hope you as well. And overall, being with you throughout your internship so far has been, I think, really tough on you. And I'm a freshman in college, so that's been a wild ride for me. But ultimately, I think it's been being able to connect so much even after all this time, just as much as we did on the first night we met. So, thank you.
The first night that we met, because like you said, I could tell that there's like an immediate connection, and the more we hung out, it felt as though I felt my heart grow and be warmer just a little bit more each day. I felt like I could breathe more. I felt like I could let go. I felt like I was starting to feel what it felt like to have a real friend, to be supported, and to feel loved. And we did have, our ups and downs and things that we disagreed on, but like the beauty of it is how gracefully we worked through these issues and helped each other grow. And even though, we've mostly spent time in VRChat or just talking to each other, or Discord calls, it still feels as though I've known you for so much longer than that, and spent so much time with you in person, even though we haven't had the opportunity to. And there won't ever be a day moving forward where I don't feel grateful for you being in my life and being there for me when I needed it at so many points, especially in this past year alone. 1.5 years, 2 years. It was the first time that I was able to reach out for help, and you were the first person that I cried to, and the first person that I truly meant it when I said, I love you. Even if it was just platonically, I truly love you as a friend. And I'm just happy to have you in my life.